All right. Well, welcome to Live from my drum room. I'm coming to you live on YouTube today. And this is a little new and exciting adventure for me. And I'm hoping it's going to be the future of my show. And I have a great show planned for you today. Two very old and dear friends are going to join me. We're going to talk about drum miking, some tips, and I think it's going to be very informative and educational. And so, without further ado, I'm going to welcome my two guests, my two illustrious guests. All right, please welcome. I love saying this, by the way. Grammy Award winning drummer, author, educator, and my dear friend, drummer for Dream Theater, Extreme, many amazing bands, many recordings, just an absolute phenomenon. My dear friend Mike Mangini is here today.
Hello. Hi,
There he
John.
is.
Hi, Brian.
Great to see you, buddy. And also joining Mike and myself is my dear friend, 31 years, my friend Ryan Smith, artist relations manager for Shure Microphones, based in Nashville, and an expert on drum miking. And I'll say my dear personal friend who has helped me with getting my drum sound together. And I'm so happy to have Ryan here with us today, too. So big hand for both of you guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And Mike, I don't know if I told you this, maybe Ryan told you this, but I had reached out to Ryan a few weeks ago, or maybe even a month or so ago. And I said, Ryan, I'd love to have you come on and talk about drum miking and, lend your expertise. And he had the great idea. I wish I could take credit. He had the great idea to say, let's get Mike Mangini. And I thought, that guy's won a Grammy. He'll never do this. This is way below his pay grade to do this. But thanks to you being so generous with your time and being here today.
No problem. It's always a pleasure. And it's important. It's important. That's the other thing.
Yes, it is. It is. I want to give everybody watching a little background on our history, Mike, you and me.
Okay.
I've been thinking about this a lot. And I sometimes, as we get older and you sort of lose sight of really important things that you shouldn't lose sight of. And that is that we've known each other for so long really been friends since 1989. But I was thinking, when I was living in LA before I moved back to Boston in late 1988, I'd heard your name from so many people here in Boston when I was working for Drum Workshop. And people were telling me about this incredible drummer, Mike Mangini. You were playing in Rick Berlin's band. Rick Berlin, the movie, was the name of the band at the time. And I couldn't wait to meet you. When I moved back, I remember our friend Freddie G introduced me to you at his shop one day. And you were this very unassuming. What I think I liked about you mostly is that we're the same height, about the same size, and a fellow Italian from Boston, and there you go. And then I remember seeing you play for the first time at the Channel with Rick Berlin, and I absolutely lost my mind. I'd heard all this about you, and then when I saw you play, you exceeded everything that I had heard and expected. And it's no surprise that you've gotten to where you are today. But I think people need to understand your background, and your history. I think most people probably your profile was so incredibly raised when you joined Dream Theater in 2010. People probably don't know about you have a jazz and classical background.
Yeah.
And maybe you could even talk about that. But if you listen to how you play, you're such a melodic musical drummer. It makes sense that you have that background, but I don't think people realize how deep your knowledge goes.
Well, there's a couple of things. Thank you. It's a lot of experience and a lot of help from a lot of people, and that's part of why we do these things, why we're doing this today too. You have common goals, common objectives, and you can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone. So with that diverse musical background of mine, it's interesting how that comes into play with why we're even here today with the microphones and everything, because these different genres demand a different kind of representation, the different kind of sound, and having experience that's musically diverse is really a big help, because then when you get pinpointed into a particular job, like, look at maybe the reason why I find people don't know about my like competitive jazz history or classical stuff, how many auditions I've actually done, different kinds of music, is because I've been hired by people that are from a particular, more of a progressive thing,
Mhm.
Even when I was with Extreme, I still played on the edge a little bit, but with Vi, is that me? Is that my microphone, or
Uh,
I'm not my microphone? The I don't know, something buzz. Sometimes my Pro
yeah.
Tools gets unhappy because I've got a lot of plugins. I probably shouldn't do that. It's not the mics. It's that. So you get pigeonholed, but these are the people paying me. So I get paid. I have been paid to play complex music with a lot of chops and fast. So you get known as that, and
Yeah.
the other stuff gets forgotten, especially in final mixes and things, where what you actually sound like with your groove and your swing and your dynamics doesn't make it there. With all like the sound replacements, there's editing, there's all kinds of stuff I know we can get into. But my thing has been pretty like a tunnel vision. With it's complicated, it's fast stuff, because that's who was paying me. So
Mhm.
I'm not surprised that a lot of people don't know about a lot of live jazz recordings and Latin gigs and weddings, even GB stuff, whatever. But the point is made that, yeah, that bio of mine is not out there. I'm a lousy marketer, and I've been hitting a lot of notes and playing complicated stuff with big drum sets, and you have to get a tight sound or you can't be heard. You just can't be heard. So anyway, yeah, I agree.
That's great. And I just want to add on to that too. And I think I believe there is video existing of this. The Modern Drummer Festival in 2000, was it 2006, Mike, that you did the MD Fest?
Well, the best one was 1999. I did the Fire Garden Suite. I
Oh
had
yeah.
I had a personal trainer. I was all healthy and working out and everything. 2006, I showed up to New Jersey, fresh out of having an infant in the house and not sleeping for months, with the worst haircut. I actually played that performance in my pajamas. I just didn't care. I was like, who cares? I'm just going to play drums. And then I got torn apart. My hair of course, got torn apart. My look got torn apart. Everything about everything got torn apart. So, but I have a big sense of humor, and I remember us being there, and I'm just like, let's make this great. Unfortunately, only half the performance is known about. The other half was the Led Zeppelin medley that no one's allowed to put out there. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Well, that's what I was referring to. I was there. I saw it live, and it was unbelievable. And I think the point I was going to make is that I think you showed everybody that day that you could, everybody talks about playing a groove, and I love a great sounding groove, obviously, and you sat down and played a serious groove that day. I mean, you showed everybody, and you did it right-handed and you did it left-handed.
I played the Zeppelin all left-handed on a big drum kit, because I
Right.
wanted the drum kits to be split in half, and I'm like, well, I did all this practicing, why not use it? And I just played the Zeppelin stuff lefty.
Incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe someday we'll see it. Yeah. And Ryan Smith, no stranger to the Modern
John.
Drummer Festival and PASIC, and all the years that we would hang out and I'd see you at all these big shows, and you were the go-to guy there for sure, and taking care of everybody. And to this day, you are the go-to person for, we were just talking about Billy Bob Thornton, but maybe just talk a little bit about your job and what you do, and kind of you got a lot on your shoulders there.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you, Johnny. I mean, we've definitely known each other for quite a long time. I go back 31 years with Shure, and so hearing about the 99 Modern Drummer Festival, I mean, I was there, and for 2006. And
Yeah.
we certainly have seen our share of artists, and you know, have plenty of memories to go along with that. But you know, and you know what this job entails too. I mean, it's a lot of going out and seeing shows, meeting with artists, trying to get their impressions of your products and stuff like that, and use it for marketing. So that's kind of what the job is. And you know, I'm sitting here in Nashville inside sound check rehearsals, and just down the hall is Corey Wong's band rehearsing. So you know, it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful to be here and to get to interface with not only a lot of artists, but also their crew and management at times and stuff like that. And it's exciting to meet new people. So
That's great.
Ryan, would you do me a favor and send my best to Pitar, the drummer, and Corey and the whole band, please? If you say
absolutely,
great,
I certainly will. Yeah, I remember you did the Pearl event with them here in Nashville, which was fantastic. So
all kinds of fun.
That's
I will
great.
certainly do that.
See, well, that's that old background playing those, you know, forgive my Boston accent, but don't the Han parts on that, you know, that all like the different chinas and stuff. I mean, I was just crawling out of my skin in a good way, dying because we only got one really play the song once. And then, you know, everyone, just a lot of people that have a job to do, and other drummers there you gotta respect. So I played it and I tested some stuff. I couldn't wait to play, but it was great.
That's great. So Mike, so you're coming to us live from your studio.
Yeah.
And what a setup you have there. And should we sort of get into a little bit of your setup and what you've got for microphones on this incredible drum kit you have there? And
yes, of course, without forgetting that nobody does this alone. You know, Ryan was a part of this. And just before we go on, and part of why we're here too, I think the tough part of the job that you guys have, or John, you had at Zildjian and Ryan has, is, you know, when you're dealing with sales, you're dealing with products, you're dealing with artists, it's a thing when you have to say no to somebody. It's kind of interesting how it separates people. It separates the artist and how you probably really feel about them when you just could do what you can do. And sometimes you have to say no, you know? And I've had no said to me plenty of times. Here I am. But there are reasons for that, and there are reasons for the yeses. So when we get to the yes reason, here we are. One of the yes reasons, like Ryan, because Ryan has provided for me full setups for those giant kits that I used while I was with Dream Theater, and those same Beta 98 microphones were the ones I took with me on Vi and all my drum clinics. They're the ones over there right now. Which camera? Here we go. Can you see the big kit over there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, anyway, but that's part of my, where am I? Here I am. There are my feet. That's part of that's part of my answering.
I'll take camera 3 now.
Yeah. You know, to show a little bit of the room, although I've taken a few pictures for you. The whole deal is that bigger kit also has 98s on the toms. These are the newer ones. The amp 98A.
98 amps, yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that kit, Ryan, those are the ones you originally gave me. How many years ago? 20 something?
30? Good old SM98s, yep.
Yeah, you know, there they are. So the bottom line is that they last. They're great.
Yeah.
I've used those 98s on so many albums that now here in this particular facility that I have, what I did is I went from all the 98s on that kit and some spot microphones and a new way to get all the cymbals mic'd over to this drum kit you're seeing, is that I have a Beta 52, typically bass drum microphone in this gong floor, angled separately. And I think one of the pictures that I took, you could see it more clearly, but it's like, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. It's mic'd kind of like you would mic, I don't know. I don't want to say a timpani, like from the side, but the mic isn't going up, it's going sideways. So it's in the drum getting the hugeness of it, but it's also pointing at the middle, because big drums are interesting in where they're striked. If you strike in the middle, you get more of a slap. If you strike off the center, you get a little bit less of a slap and more of what someone would refer to as a round sound. And those, like, so there's the Beta 52 in the actual a kick drum on the other kit.
Okay. Yep.
On one of those special pillows that has the mic stand on it. And you know what's interesting about it, and people watching, it's the little things, like that picture that you showed, the cord coming out of the bass drum. Like, who thinks of this, right? Like, where do you put it? Because if it goes in the hole, it rattles. So I had to position not only the pillow, but I had to tear up another one and position it such that that cord is landing. That's the gong drum from the live kit. That's a floor tom. The kick drum that you had in so that's showing the Beta 52 when I was live with Dream Theater, how the mic is suspended, right?
Yeah.
In that particular gong floor tom.
Good old Kelly shoe system. Yep.
Yeah, but the actual kick drum, I had to place the cord so it wouldn't rattle. And so it's just little things like that do matter, because you could tape it up and then it muffles the thing. And you're like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do about this? This wasn't in the manual. And you have to kind of figure things out. So with all of that said, with all the little nuances, with this particular kit, what it does is the microphones, they all have a purpose. This is being used right now for a recording where the drums have to have a punchy, tight sound, less of the room, because the room comes in handy in specific situations. It's weaved in very meticulously. It's like it's the wild card. The room sound is the wild card. We can get way more into that later, because my microphone setups reflect that, my solo album, what I'm doing here, my time with Dream Theater Live, like that is a real big deal. But for now, this kit has to be really clear, punchy, but sound, obviously the real stereo image. So the Beta 52 in the gong floor clearly gets that, picks up the lows. I have a 181 on this, which is a 16-inch floor tom, and I would typically use a 98 on this, but I didn't, because with the 98s here and a 98 down here, what I found was that this particular drum head put on with these mahogany shells in this particular room, on the flooring that it's on, for the music that I'm doing, needed more of the 181 picked up more of the sound around it. Sorry, that's one of my plugins. Don't worry about that. It's not the microphone. It's not these beautiful Shure microphones. So
it could be my brain frying too. It could be any. Yeah.
No. I mean, you have to. That's the kind of thing with microphones and your environment, studio, podcast. You have to morph for the situation. I mean, it's better for me to have this sounding so you can hear me clearly with the way that it is, and maybe a little bit of clip because it's a podcast. But whatever. I mean, I know that's whatever. Let me just get off that. Not everybody has that, but but I'm moving. I'm not sitting here like behind a desk. I'm actually moving around. So that's the inputs higher. That's really why. All right. So look, the 181 is on the floor tom with this black dot head because it had, it was different, slightly different than the 98. If I use my clear Emperors on this, I would have the 98 on it. And there are reasons for that. There's also a 98 up here on the schizophrenic drum, because sometimes it's a snare, sometimes it's a high tom. Oh, it's going to come out through the vocal mic. I want to just, I mute the vocal mic when I hit stuff, but just so you
sounds fine.
Understand, you have the snare, and then I turn it off, and you get that. So it doubles as a timbale, a high tom, higher than this one, and a snare drum. And I do turn it on and off when I play. So that's the basic thing with these drums. The snare drum has two microphones.
Yeah.
It's got a 58, not a 57. Yeah. It's a 58 and also a 181, because the 181's just getting the sound that it gets and the spectrum that it gets, as opposed to the 58, which, Ryan, you know, that's like the same thing as a 57, but but the capsule's not the same, and to some people it doesn't do anything, but to me it does.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference, and it's so much fun. Experimenting with that. And look at that, Johnny. Ryan even had it engraved with my name on it, Mike Mangini snare mic.
Nice. Now, Mike, do you have both of those snare mics are on the top head?
Yeah.
Or is one underneath? Yeah. They're both in the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're both on the top. I have a 181 under this snare, but not under this snare in particular. I do a different treatment for the main snare drum. So
gotcha.
I've got 137s on the hi-hats just to get as tight as I can on those, and up above, I don't use overheads. I have something behind me that's up high, but it's not necessarily what you think of as a traditional overhead. The traditional overhead goes right over the cymbals, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's what I would think. Yeah.
So guess what that picks up mostly?
Cymbals.
Metal. Well, that metal is already the loudest thing in the kit, aside from the transients of a really hard hit snare drum, which has that transient to it. It pops. So I abandoned putting microphones above my kit a long time ago. I put them down on the side and aiming up to get the cymbal, so I actually have a clear representation of the stereo image of my kit. And I put them back, and you get all the metal. I have to take my time and position those. So that's this setup. And the real trick with this kit is I've got the VP. Yeah, that's like that. Well, that's not. You have to see above it.
Okay. Yep.
I don't think see, that picture was for the 44 that's behind the kit. And that's a different thing. That's not what I'm talking about right now.
Okay.
That's the other kit. So hold on with that one. I have the VP up, not behind the up here. What it's doing is, Ryan, you can describe what that microphone is.
Yeah, and that's a VP88 stereo mic. So,
but it's also it's got a wide. What's it go to 270 or something? It goes wide, really wide.
Yeah, you can adjust the pickup patterns because there's separate capsules in the mic, so you can adjust whether you want a high, medium, or low pickup lobe, and set that accordingly to your use. Right.
So that's on my kit, because when this was mic'd, like from my there you go, there it is on the big kit. There's also one here. On this kit. See, that gets the most, it's amazing. It gets the most incredibly even and pure representation of the drum kit, but I have it aimed like a dead center where the cymbals all meet, the sound of the cymbals meet. And so I don't have to worry about all those spot mics changing that. What I mean by that is I use my cymbal spot mics, the 137s, to supplement what the 32s are picking up, what the VP is picking up, because, and anybody that engineers knows this, when you turn a microphone up, it changes the kit. When you let's say I turn up the hi-hat mic on one side, well, how much snare drum is actually leaking into that? That changes the sound of the snare drum. So this is like a delicate, that's why people do this for a living, and really spend some time with it. But the VP gets it gets smack. It gets smack that is not the normal thing that gets picked up. And I needed that smack on the mahogany shells, because mahogany is just a more low-end frequency wood. It's more low-end. Maple is a birch is a very high-end. Maple is a mid-range kind of thing, if I if I have my woods right. So there you go. That's a lengthy explanation, but the point of it is that I have an intention. There's a sound I need for the project I'm doing on this drum set right now, and I better watch how loud I'm speaking. I'm Italian. The interface doesn't want me to be Italian. I keep forgetting. So the VP gets the smack, and it supplements that this is not a maple kit. It's a mahogany kit. But I need the depth and richness from the mahogany for what I'm doing, the musical purpose. The kit on the other side of the room is a hybrid, and it's all layers of birch on the inside. So that has a different sound than this one. That's this kit I'm on right now, but you can see the VP up above in the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not an overhead per se. It's actually, you can see that it's aimed sort of at the snare drum on my head. Mm-hmm. It's aimed down. And so it's actually getting the cymbals from the side. It's not getting the cymbals from up above. That's a unique thing, and I am really, really happy with it. Really.
Yeah.
It's what I need. But again, it's a mahogany kit. So it's a lengthy explanation, but you need the explanation, because anybody out there trying to mic their kit needs to examine what their intention is. Like, what sound are you aiming for? How do you get what is called the best sound out of your studio? But the best sound isn't just one sound. I mean, if you have an old school rock thing, like let's say it's Van Halen, okay? Eddie Van Halen did not take his guitar and take over and completely annihilate everything in the left-right. Like, he wasn't one of these people that has 900 tracks left and right on guitar. And he's like the greatest. He didn't need that. He was on one side, right? And the reverb was on the other. That was an incredible thing. When Van Halen 1 came out, you could actually hear that. Like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? And you could hear the drums. The drums didn't have to fight guitar in both ears, because it's not gonna be a happy ending for somebody, right?
That's a really good point. Yeah, I never thought about that, but you're right. Yeah.
And it's like, who counts the votes? Not who votes, who counts them. It's like, who's doing the mixing and what's happening with that. I mean, just to throw it out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a similar philosophy. So at the end of the day, you have a rock and roll sound. You got Bonham. Okay. We all know when the levee breaks. Most of us know that Jimmy Page took a microphone and put it in the hallway and the blah, 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 right? And so, but you try to do that with other kinds of music, all it's going to do is wash out the kit, because it's a specific thing for the specific music you're doing. When we get to it in the podcast, we get to my solo album drum set that has room. It's got the mic, and it's got the top one. It's got the mics from behind, not above the cymbal, behind it or on the side, and that kind of room and that kind of ambience worked with that album, because I was the one in charge and I had the guitar hand out of the way. It wasn't far this way or far that way. It was over here, which left room for the drum set. And it's not an old school rock album. With a rock album, you can get away with more of the room sound, I think. But with the more current kinds of music, you need a bit of a tighter sound to have it cut through, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you kind of have to adjust. And these microphones do different things. The drum heads do different things. The room does different things. So it's somewhat. Well, it depends.
Yeah. And Mike, maybe I could ask you to step back too a little bit and just talk about sound in general, because sound is a product of your source, your drums, your heads, and your cymbals, and also tuning, and all of those lead. There you go. Can lead to a specific sound that you're looking to get, right?
Yes.
And maybe talk just in general your approaches to just drum selection and tuning, and I suppose it, might differ for certain settings.
Well, it does because of the size difference and the pitch difference. But before I do that, I just want to say that having been put in the role of producer and engineer of myself, or part engineer, co-engineer, I can tell you this, that a drummer can do what I did, or be in a position to move some knobs and say, take 400 out of here, put blah, 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 this K, that K, this, do this with the HZs and whatever. And all it takes is someone that's in control can completely change it. 100% doesn't even sound like the same person. So we do have to acknowledge that with all this work that we do, all it takes is someone coming in, sound replacing, and you're finished, or getting a different balance than you actually did. There's no dynamics left. There's no real thing. There's no groove. There's no swing, because the little notes aren't even heard. It completely transform who you are and what you do into something that's interpreted. Now, it could come across that, well, that's a perversion. That's not right. But however, a lot of times when someone produces a particular band or artist or whatever, there's something in mind that they have, and they interpret it differently. So it's an interpretation at the end of the day. It's really who's the one with the power to say what happens. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. So you can do all this work, and it's almost like, so what? Someone just changed you. But let's forget that. Let's forget that and talk about a situation where you are designing, you are doing the shape, the soundscapes, all of that, the sound, your musical soul, your groove, your dynamics, all of it. How do you get that out, and what's the philosophy behind it, right, Ryan? And what's picked, and how do you deal with that? I think the first step is you have to define the result, the genre. You got to know where you're going. Okay, you have to know where you're going. It's not a good idea in nature to make something that it isn't. It's like you start messing with stuff. And before you know it, you've messed it up so badly, you don't even know how badly you've messed it up, because you're trying to change what it is. So when you're looking at the result, from that, I look at, well, how tight does the kit have to be? How much does this have to be an issue of where do the faders come in? The mics that are tight, where do they come in to play with the sound of the drums? From whose perspective? From whose perspective? Guess what? I'm the only guy that sits here. There's 7 billion people on this planet. Plus, I'm the only one that sits right here. And I've been in so many situations where I'm the last one that gets to get that final result.
Yeah.
It's like, what? But again, it's like everything can change. So I'm hearing it from this perspective, and that's how I'm approaching it, because I want that to be part of the result. And the result is tight and loose. If there's room in the music, there's air, the panning. You don't have. It depends on the acoustic instruments or not. The vocal has to be clear. The drums are acoustic. A lot of these other instruments are not. They're electronic. You've got effects, you have synth, you have delays, you've got reverb. You have instruments that are not stereo in nature being treated as stereo instruments. Like, what is that? Like, Eddie Van Halen had a guitar stack. That's a mono instrument. That is a mono instrument. It is not a stereo instrument. But a human being perceives stereo. Hence, you got that reverb on it, or its delay, and whatever it is, it gives it that effect of a human being hearing an amazing guitar sound that's got it EQ'd and mic'd the way that it sounds best to that artist and that person. But it's a better version of it. It's not just the one in the room. That's why typical room sounds don't always work, because you have a sound with plastic on a drum head. That's not a great sound from 20 feet away. I'm sorry. But if you're going to design the drum set for that kind of sound, you got to have probably thinner heads on it, maybe clear ambassadors if you're using Remo. You know what I mean? Like, you got to think about that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
the sound
yeah.
you're capturing. You know, if I put a thicker drum head on, it's literally more plastic. So you're getting some of that essence in those further microphones. It sounds more like you're in a garage than anything. So you got to balance it. At the end of the day, what is the sound of this drum kit that you're looking for? If we're talking about drums, you're talking about guitar. It's like, okay, you're taking a mono instrument, but now you're flooding far left and right with it. What? To me, like, what? You know, so I did a solo album, and it's rock. It's not metal. I didn't make a metal album, so the guitar is not in both sides like that. It's over here. Now, when I've done other music, older stuff, new stuff that's happening, there's effects and things. So now we're talking it's stereo because it's a stereo instrument in its source, you know? But anyway, getting off of that, this whole thing coming across, I'm trying to look at the result. My kick drum has a 91 down low on some padding, and the Beta 52 is in the hole but out from the hole, so it's you get that air, right? So can I turn my voice off and just play?
Sure.
All right, let me. Oh, that's the PC. I got more mouses and buttons and knobs and stuff. Okay, so let me turn the voice one down. Oh, there we go. I didn't like that. Clearly, I have to get some of the plugins off the kit. So you have a recording. You actually have a recording of this.
I do. Yeah. Should I play the audio recording?
Yeah, because I mean, I would never do a recording with this kind of setting. You know.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Play it so you can really hear this.
Yeah. Let's play the audio. Hang on one second. I'll bring that up. We had it there for a second. Okay. So here we go. Good. Is that good?
Yeah. So with that particular clip, which was this drum kit when I'm not in the particular mode I have to be to go input and go through the interfaces and out and all that. What you have there is you can actually hear the groove and the swing. You hear the swing in the groove because you can hear the dynamics in the metal and on the snare drum. That those are the notes in the middle between the beat. If that track got pulled into a certain environment and sound replaced, okay? Because with that kick drum, you can hear my actual beater kind of hitting before the hit, like it gives it a feel, you know, because the spring is doing this. So with these recordings, people are going to be able to like maybe not know what it is, but if you hear the drum track, you can hear the beater kind of like, I don't have a gate on this thing cutting that out. So you kind of get the feel of it. You get the in-between notes. Someone comes in and sound replaces it. All of that's gone. You might as well have a drum machine. You just might as well have a drum machine because you don't get all the dynamic differences. And like when I lay into the cymbals as a ride, it's not so overpowering that, if I hit anything else, you're not going to hear it. And that's because those microphones are out and going this way. And that this microphone above me is getting the stereo image of this kit without necessarily getting the more, I don't know, in this sense, the sound of this drum set with these heads way away, as opposed to I had different heads on this kit when I put like that KSM, that 44 that you showed earlier that was behind the big kit. Now, this kit was spun the other way. So that microphone over there was getting the front of it, and it was pretty unbelievable. I was like, wow, that's a quality, thick, kind of brilliant room sound, as it were, that got leaked into the drum kit for the purpose that it was needed for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And let me just show, that's this mic we're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can see how far away it is from the kit I'm on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And from my solo album, I didn't have that one there, but I had the 232s back there.
Yeah.
So if you play anything from my solo album, it's on the line with it not being, let's just say, it's not like standard rock 101. And it veers more toward metal, although it really, it's not fully metal. So that room, as it were, the ambient from those microphones on that kit worked for that production, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me. Go ahead, Ryan. Yeah, you please go.
I was going to make. What point did you make the determination on are going to work great in my studio setting?
Can you say that again? Only because you cut out to me.
Yeah, it got a little jar.
Yeah, sorry about that. At what point did you determine that the live mics you were using were going to work well in your studio setting?
When I started to understand what they were and how they work, I had to I had to be educated, and I had to hear. So, like live, I felt that, first of all, microphones facing me were not facing the venue. So it cut out the delay and that aspect, and the other musicians from the actual going into my microphones, right? As opposed to being flat on the top. So with the 32s, it was the other way. I had used them to record, and then I just took them out live saying, just use these things. Or in a bunch of pictures that I provided, either it was a 32 or a 40 or 44s, and you could see them on the drum kit live with Dream Theater when the sound engineers started to kind of, follow my lead with that. Could you, are you trying to put that in there, Johnny? Because I'm not seeing it.
No, I just spotlighted you. I wanted to just have a nice spotlight of.
Here's the spotlight. Here I am. I'm like, okay, there we go. So, bottom line is that I made the decisions, Ryan, pretty much because I was hearing what the mics were picking up while being recorded. I wasn't as concerned about what was happening out in front with the PA, because the PA is not what is being recorded. if that makes any sense. It's
Yeah,
the sound
absolutely.
that's being recorded that's being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard recordings, it helped me to kind of decide, like, well, you know what? I think I'll try like a 181. Like here in this studio, I will definitely use the Beta 52 because. Can I talk about why I had single-headed floor toms made? Because it has to do with the miking and everything.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
All right. Two of my kits have single-headed floor toms, 14, 16, 18, and 20. The reason why I did that is because there was feedback happening in certain venues. Certain venues, it was the 14 that were just impossible to tune. You couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. It just had feedback. It had some feedback, right? So you couldn't get rid of it. And it wasn't just the drum going like, it was, no matter how you tune the drum, it was reacting to its position, to the space that it was, where it was in the venue, the frequencies in the venue, the low end feedback, right? So it was causing a feedback loop. Sometimes it was the 16-inch floor tom. Sometimes it was the 14. It was usually one of the two. So I thought that a single-headed drum might combat that because, Eric was changing my bottom heads. And it was like almost like what we tried. It didn't work. It's like taping them, and you can't pull a bottom drum head off a regular floor tom. That just doesn't happen. I mean, it can, but the only time I've had it work was an 18-inch floor tom with a black dot head and a 91 underneath the drum on the floor. That's actually the only time, but you can't really, and that was live. There's so much leakage coming in depending on the musicians that you're with that you can't get away with that. That was a drum clinic.
Yeah.
I did that at PASIC. So, again, like what's the destination situation? So live, yeah, that's really the situation. Was there's a 91 18-inch floor, but that didn't work. That we tried it. You take a bottom head off a floor tom, it's the worst thing you ever heard in your life. So Pearl was kind enough to go with the flow. I said, the 20 is the most unbelievable sounding drum ever. How about we make smaller ones? Like, yay. So it's just common sense, just like putting the overheads, not as overheads, but as cymbal mics or ambient mics in a place that they are ambient because they're doing ambience. They're picking up the drum kit, but not a crappier sound, meaning hitting plastic from afar. That's not a better sound. I think you're better off with a tighter sound using the reverb in the jaw, unless okay, you've got a guitar player, it's over here, it's mono with whatever reverb or delay bouncing off the other side, fine. You got drums that are a room sound in the room. I've been in 5150. I was there for 2 straight weeks drumming every single day. So I know what, when I hear the records, I like, oh my gosh, I was there.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand. I get it. In that band, in that set, I wasn't in that band in that setting. So my sound was for a different band in a different setting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I gotta figure out what plugin was clipping because I could play this more, but everyone heard it at least.
Well, Mike, if I want to, there's a couple of good questions I think from the audience watching. If I can ask you those,
Yeah.
Because we're sort of on the first question is just a general question, which is how many, and this I was curious about this myself. How many mics in total on the kit are we seeing? Do you know that number off the top of your head? How many total mics you have set up here?
I might be wrong about the big Dream Theater kit, but I think it had 40. I think it had 40 microphones on it. Now, you're going to start to get a lot of bleed and fade and all stuff like that. But anyway, the mic selection and the way it was put together eventually it was unbelievable. I think it was 40. But I have to actually think about that. I don't even know how it could be 40, actually. But as far as this kit, how many microphones? So it's 2 on the kick drum, 2 on the snare and 2 on this snare, so that's 6. I've got 1 on each of the toms. That's plus 4 is 10. I have 2 hi-hat microphones, and this hi-hat microphone's picking up 2 hi-hats evenly. You'll have to work with that, right? It's on the left and the right. So where are we? That's 12. I've got the 32s, those cymbal mics, that's 14. I have a mic that is picking up the ride cymbal over here, and that also picks up the tambourine and the trash cymbal. And it sounds like the cymbal. You know, that mic's picking up. It doesn't sound like some little ting on an album that you can barely hear. You know, it's a real cymbal. You can tell what this is. So what are we up to? That's 13. I've got the VP, which is stereo, so that's 15. I think that's it for this kit is 15 microphones.
Did you say the bass drum mics too? I don't know if you...
Yeah. It has, they have 2 microphones.
Yeah.
2, 4, 6, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17.
Okay. Yeah.
And my solo album kit has 8, because of the mini snare, of course, 7 toms and the gong drum. So that's 9. The snare drum has 1 mic. That's 10. Each kick has 1 mic, only 1. That's 12. I've got, oh my gosh, I got the cymbal mic, so that's 14. I got the mics from behind, that's 16. I've got spot mics on each side of the hi-hat, 18. I've got the tubes. And so for my solo album, the tubes actually split because I went to 24. I went to 24 on that one. And that was so I could have the behind mics. I had extra mics behind me, so I canned 2 of the tubes to make. I actually have a sub mixer for those. I have a sub mixer, but I only recorded 2. Anyway, so I guess there's 26 mics on the Dream Theater-esque era kit, and there are 17 over here.
Wow. Okay. Another quick question, and I think it goes to what you were just talking about, and I think you've addressed some of this already, but looks like the question is, modern recording mix levels are pushed to the max for peak volume, but lose dynamics, in my opinion, which is what you were just saying about the dynamics. Do you ever wrestle with your organic sound versus mega compressed drums with tons of effects added? Like, are you ever in a situation maybe where, and it sounds like you have been, but you've now taken control of that situation, but you've been in that situation where you've had to have the drums compressed and.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so the question was like, how have I wrestled with it? And the answer is only in my own mind, because I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't me, and it didn't sound like me, but okay, is it coming back? It's not. It's my rig is sensitive because it's set for recording. I actually didn't want to mess with it. I know we have the podcast, just so people understand. As I can change that so that this stuff doesn't happen, but I don't want to mess with it right now. Okay, so I haven't really wrestled with it because I'm either in control or I'm not in control. So in some ways, with certain kinds of music, you know, that overcompressed thing, though, that the drums get turned into is not this. It's something else, but it's somebody else's interpretation of it. So where I have contemplated how much of one to use in the other one, if you go to my solo album, that is kind of a mixture between the two. Mm-hmm. Now, my solo album, like this kit with that recording that you heard, is more toward this. Let's say just it's less of all the compressed stuff or sound replacements. I don't do sound replacements. Okay, I have sound layers and enhancements. That is a different issue. I have a completely different angle on that. I do not replace my drums. And when you hear this in my solo album, it is those bass drums. You are hearing something. They each have a layer, but it is the drum itself being layered in. I'm not replacing the sound. So, but when I'm hired, engineers typically do that. They go to their stock sounds that they like and they put them on the kick and the snare, and that's how it goes. That's the job. That's, so I've always been okay with that being done because it was my job it wasn't to do that. I'm not okay with it as far as it's my musical soul, and I don't like that because there's no groove. It's missing the dynamics. The ghost notes out there, you can't really hear the nuances. You can't hear this. If you can't hear the nuances, you can't hear the swing. I mean,
right.
Recordings. I mean, if it's like, if the room mics of the recordings that I've done were ever released, like just the room mics, you would hear the real me. But that won't work in the final production because it sounds like it's just not going to cut. It's not going to cut. It's going to sound muffly and washy and brash. It's just not going to do that. Now, I face that with my solo album where the mics that were further from the kit really reflected it. You can hear this on YouTube video Untethered Angel. I did a replay of Untethered Angel. If you go to Untethered Angel, you're going to hear that drum set with more of those mics and less of that, stuff being done to it. Now, it's like it's the solo album kit, but the solo album kit wasn't exactly the same as that. The solo album kit had to have a little bit more of things with some stuff on it, or just like, how can I say? I guess the compression, but a certain kind of compression. I didn't do that, and the way it was done properly for me, for my taste. So I can't answer the question without giving examples so people can go and actually listen to the difference between these things. Mm-hmm. You listen to the difference from what I played here. You can hear the tiny ghost notes on Untethered Angel. That video, I have to slam more of the parts to compete with the other tracks of music. Going to get kind of less of that stuff, but at least on that rendition, you're going to get more of the actual real drum kit than if it was processed and so forth. So it depends on the result and the vision of the person, the interpretation of the person kind of spearheading that and what it is that they see. So I'm not going to go back and record something for Steve Vai again and think that I'm going to go and turn all the knobs. First of all, I'm not going to be doing that because he's got a great drummer anyway. He doesn't need me. But if I did record something, I would have a lot to say and offer. Hey, I want to talk about this kind of a thing, mm-hmm. But ultimately Steve would have to put the drums in his composition the way he hears it, if that makes any sense.
It does. No, and I think to add to that, I think that's a really good point, that at this point in your life, when you're hired to do a record, do a recording, I got to think people want, as much as they want you, Mike Mangini, the drummer, and the way you play, they also want your sound. And with that, I think you've earned that right now to kind of have some control there, I have to think, right? Where you can at least, like you said, if Steve Vai were to hire you for a record, he would probably have an idea of what he wanted the drums to sound like. But I would think you'd be able to say, well, Steve, I really don't want to compress the snare drum that much, or I don't want to, whatever, you've kind of got to that point.
Well, yeah. And here's the argument that I would use, which by the way, I'm not really known for any drum sound really, because I've been under other people's, running the show.
Yeah.
production
Yeah.
producers and things. So people really don't know, like they don't know my jazz history, my contemporary history, my Latin. They don't know my competitive background. They don't know the orchestral background. They don't know, if they don't know that, they don't even understand why I have drums. They just think I have a lot of drums. They have no clue why I even set the drums up like that. Even though I've explained it, it goes over heads, or I haven't explained it enough. I'm not very good.
Yeah.
That's my fault. But people don't know. I don't have an identifiable necessarily sound because I haven't been in a position of control to put the sound out there ever, except my solo album and what I'm doing now, certain things. And now people are really going to hear, my personal real sound is, the way I would like it projected. So I kind of haven't earned so much of that because there's nothing for people to trust. I have to provide that trust. So there's that. The other thing is that here's the other thing that's huge. I'm the guy creating it. So when I speak to Ryan, it's like, Ryan, I'm on my drum set. I play it. I record it. I need a little bit more. I don't know what it is. I'm not getting an actual attack that I want, or like a smack. That's the word I use. I'm not getting the smack out of the drums. It's the same 98 on there, but I'm getting plenty of smack over there. Is it that's in a box? Is it the difference of room? No, because these are the microphones. They're tight microphones. I'm like, I'm not getting it. And well, so I leaked the other microphones and I'm getting it over there. I'm not getting it here. So Brian was like, maybe it's the VP is the answer. And I said, the 44 works really well under this condition. He's like, well, I'll send you more of those. And so, I'm sitting here composing. I'm making up drum parts. I would like to hear that on an album. I don't want to compose it, like, can you see, and anybody watching here, that, hello, hi. So you can see the stereo image here, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah.
all right. So this drum is far right, but if I pan it all the way, it fires off. I hate the drums panned fully. I hate them panned fully because, like the tom-toms, because it sounds like drum machine notes going off. It just doesn't sound, it's not real to me. So this has to be put in the way my human ears hear it. When I hit this drum, I actually do hear it in my left ear. Wouldn't you if you were sitting here? Hello?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
So I'm sorry. And if I hit, hello, if I hit this bad Larry here, right? Or even these hi-hats over here, yes, they're on the left side, but they're not in a corner on the left. You can still hear them with your right ear. So there's a certain stereo image that's not as wide as we think it is. And so my big kit has been panned maximum on both sides, which is just not, it just honestly makes it sound like a program. It really does. It makes it sound like a drum machine. It has to be compressed in a little bit, because when I hit this drum here, it should sound like it's there.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually composing the drum part that way. That's how I compose it. So why is it going to sound different than the way I compose it, which has been my, a lot of my career, is that I compose a certain way, but the drums sound completely different when I get it back at the end. It's not what I meant. It's not what I did. And it's not even how I sound. And it's not even how I really feel. Like, not like I feel like I have my feelings. That's not what I'm talking about. It's like the feel of the actual part, the sound of the actual drums, the way I composed it with the dynamics and the ghost notes and the swing. That has all been gone. It's just gone out of recordings, depending on what the result is, depending on the interpretation, depending on who's in control. That's just how it is.
I had the pleasure of going to an album, and one of the tracks they had in there was by the Beach Boys. Did you lose me again? Sorry.
Lost you at the beginning of it. I did catch the Beach Boys. I didn't know what you said before that.
Yeah, I went to a Dolby Atmos room at Blackbird Studios
Oh,
here in Nashville,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that was one of the tracks they had in the Atmos room. And of course, you're hearing all this stuff flying in different directions in that room because of the way Atmos is. And the first thing I thought of was, wow, I wonder if this is the way Brian imagined it.
Yeah, probably, I would think.
I mean, just this interpretation of sound coming from all different places, and that wasn't a thing back then. But
Right.
it really blew me away, and how composers think like that, and that's kind of what made me think of when you were talking there, Mike.
Yeah, because the bottom line is that when you are sitting on the drum throne, this is the most stereo instrument there is. But it's not a maxed out situation where when I hit this cymbal, you hear it as if it's some kind of drum machine sample firing off in the left ear only. You hear it over here too, less.
Right.
So it's got to be in there a bit. And the
Yeah,
toms have to be reflected like they are. They can't be reflected maximum pan, flying off like they're sampled and tight. It's just like, no. So again, on my solo album, you'll hear a stereo image. You should play something from that.
Yeah, Mike, what should I play? Give me I've got it up here in my iTunes ready to go. If you can give me a good example of something that that you think would be a good representation of that.
What did I send you for video? Because then people can see what they're hearing.
Yeah, sure. You sent me the video. It's about a 40-second video, and I've got the whole Invisible Signs album downloaded. But let's play the video. How about that? Let's do that.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
See what they're hearing.
Yes, perfect. Hang with me for 1 second. All right. This is Glamorous Shades. Okay. Just need to. Okay, here we go. Wow. Oh, man. That sounded incredible.
Yeah, that's just awesome.
Yeah.
Well, they're my drums. It's my album. I'm the producer. I also am the initial drum engineer, but Jimmy T, who I worked with in Dream Theater for years, is someone that I had been discussing and evolving that sound with over time. That sound evolved into A View from the Top of the World, but it wasn't us in the final stages of it. So that's the difference between that album and what you just heard, is that
Right.
it kind of like what you just heard is all Jimmy T and me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's also designed for that particular that album. Like my solo album, for example, Keyboard World. That's where I wrote all that and played all that. It's all virtual instruments initially. Then I had the virtual guitar replaced with real guitar, and the virtual bass replaced with real bass. But the rest of it stayed. The reason I say that is because the keyboards had a certain role. Either they were doing a kind of loop sound effect, or the keyboard really was turned into almost like a vicious, fake, really cool hybrid of a bass and a guitar. I call it a riffer, and that's what I named it in my. This is the riffer. So that's going on but it's less of a prominent landscape provider than, for example, in Dream Theater, where the keyboards are just, man, they're like, nobody does it like Jordan. Nobody. There's like a story in the sound. It's so amazing. And the thing is, you know, the drums are one instrument, that's an instrument, the other instrument. They all have to work together for a result for that end. The end. You know, my solo album had a different end result where keyboards in particular were used functionally slightly differently. The vibe they portrayed was one of loop and one of enhancement for the guitar and the bass. That riffer is the connector between the bass and the guitar. But when you hear the drums like you just did, you can actually almost see the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's because of the placement of, well, there are no overheads. There are no overheads. There's the mics that are catching the cymbals, but they're not above them. They're out, or they're behind. They're behind and facing out this way, in.
Yeah.
Now, I can't do that. Ryan, you asked about live. I can't put them in here facing out because in a venue, that's going to pick up, you know, all kinds
Crazy.
of gush and Ks and HCs,
Leakage.
whatever. But facing in, you know, that's how I got that sound. You know, and there's all kinds of technical things about this with phasing, no phasing, and this, that, and the other thing. But you know what? It's like I don't let all that stuff. I don't know. I don't let all that stuff get to me. It's almost like I don't really know the actual name of the key signature I'm using when I'm writing a song. Although I know key signatures, I studied mallets. I know what a Phrygian is. I know A minor as opposed to A major. I mean, I understand Mixolydian. Obviously, that I'm saying the names, I'm aware of these things, but I'm not into it. Like, I don't recognize it. I don't know. So when I'm writing, I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't almost want to know sometimes. It's almost the same thing. It's almost the same thing with getting too deep into the engineering thing. It's like, this sounds like my drums. I don't know if I broke some rule, but I like the sound. It's like that room over there. That shouldn't be. What you just heard should not come from that room in this facility based on what I have been told. Based on, oh, well, the drum room, big ceiling. That's a low ceiling. So how about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Big room spread. Well, that's a small room. It's a cubby hole. How about that? That goes against all the grains. Well, the mics, if they're aiming this way, this one phases with this, causes this phase and that thing and this K and that. I'm just like, you know, maybe because I'm a deaf drummer with no 3K, I don't hear it. It's there. But at the end of the day, you know, it sounds like my drums.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for years. I mean, I haven't needed a zillion microphones. I mean, it's made a big difference. But at one point, I was able to self-produce way before I was known for anything and on any recordings, you know, before Extreme, before Steve Vai. I recorded like with the Rick Berlin thing and some other stuff that I did. I just had a few microphones, but I never put the microphones above me. I put them behind me to get the kit, and then I spot my Rotos with SM57s. We're probably talking like my whole mic setup was under $400 or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ryan?
Yeah. No, and that's, and I want to just, I don't want to take you off that subject, Mike, but I do want to just go to Ryan for 1 second and just talk about, because I think when we were talking about all those microphones, I'm guessing some people's heads might have been spinning thinking 18 microphones, and what that translates to financially. But we've all talked about this, and Ryan and I were talking about just what you said, Mike. You can mic your drum kit and have it sound really great on a budget, with great Shure microphones like 57s. And Ryan, maybe you could just take a second and talk about that, what you'd recommend for drummers trying to get a great sound for a live or recording, what you'd recommend.
Yeah.
For
And it's, it can be specific, applications for specific. No, I mean, you're going to think less and more, put up 1 or 2 mics and then a kick drum mic, and you want to hear more of the acoustic picture of the kit rather than the closed mic tom situation. We've got a kind of a couple of entry level PGA drum mic kits. One of them has 4 mics, the other one has 7. And the 7 PGA drum mic kit 7 is roughly around $700 street price, right around there.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
you get cables in a case, and it's a great starter kit. And I've actually taken it into the studio and gotten some pretty decent sounds with it. So, that's a great place to start if you're starting out and you want to play around with recording your own kit at home. And then it goes up from there. You can get 57s for all of your toms and a 52, and then just start adding some condenser mics on top of that. And pretty soon you'll have 18 to 28 like Mike Mangini has.
Yeah.
So, and it can be budget specific. And, sometimes there's a lot of times when drummers and to get and one comes down to, how do I best want to capture what it is I'm trying to portray, and picking some different microphones and experimenting. Really, that's the biggest thing. It probably took Mike a long time to figure out, placement sometimes can make a big difference between an inch, 2 inches here and there, and finding those sweet spots. And think any difference by moving that mic. Sometimes very little, can make a big difference. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was
yeah,
just going to,
that's kind of the approach I have there on that. So
yeah, I was just going to say too, from a personal standpoint, just here in my little drum room here at home, I've got a Beta 91 in the bass drum and 2 SM81s that I got from you, Ryan. And I use the Glenn Johns approach, the sort of like the 3 mic, obviously the one in the bass drum, and then I've got one kind of like Mike was talking about too, behind me. Can't really see it, but it's kind of over my left shoulder, being the southpaw that I am. And then the other one is over the snare and sort of, almost dead center over the snare and mounted tom. And it sounds incredible. It really does. It really, for 3 really good microphones. It would, if I got a mic on each tom and snare drum, it would obviously enhance the sort of I'd be able to really control and separate each drum better. But just in terms of an acoustic organic sound, you can really make it happen with 3 mics really easily.
Yeah.
I did.
No, go ahead, Mike.
So when I had less microphones, and if somebody wants to know how I would mic their kit, if it's it's a pretty standard drum set or a 6-piece kit with some cymbals, a hi-hat, ride, and stuff like that, what I would do is absolutely close mic the kick. I would definitely put it in the inside, because the cymbals leak. Everything leaks in. Everything leaks in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would definitely do that and add control to it, because again, if you're in a room, the drums sound great with just a couple of microphones in the room with some EQ or whatever it is. If they're placed right, it's like, okay, but what music are you mixing them with? So I would, like what I did is, if there are only like 3 or 4 57s, let's just say, I put one microphone to get 2 of the toms.
Mm-hmm.
You can do old school. You put right in the middle. It picks up both.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Do that. And you have one on the other side, and you have one on the snare. That's 1, 2, 3. You get one on the kick. That's your 52. That's 4. And then 2 out here. If I only had 2, I would put one behind to the right and one behind to the left. That's what I would do, because you get a mix. You get a mix of all the metal on the kit, and you actually get a bit of the kit sound off of it. So that's how I would get away with that. If I only had 3 microphones, then it would have to be 2 behind me and 1 in the kick drum, just to add. That would be the only drum where I would really want that control, because the snare leaks into everything anyway.
Right. Right. No, but I know, and I have to, my bandmates, my little classic rock band, when we play out, I mean, and the bass drum is such a low frequency that it gets lost in a club. You're playing in a club, and the bass player hits a low note, and it cancels the bass drum unless you've got something to just enhance it. Not necessarily. And I tell the guys, look, I'm not looking to make my bass drum bounce off the back wall, but it needs to be felt, and you can't feel it without having it mic'd sometimes. So, yeah.
You need that control. You do. So at the end of the day, it's always good to gain knowledge. The drum shell, the drum head, the music that you're playing, the microphone, and the differences between the microphones and what it is you're paying for. When you have something that's yielding more and there's more of a budget, you can get a little bit more meticulous with that. But it doesn't mean less than that isn't any good, because it absolutely not. I mean, there are microphones that are so expensive, I can't wrap my head around some of them. There are, of course, people that do, and engineers that do, and applications. So you go, oh, listen to that. It's like, oh, okay. All right, I got you. Mm-hmm. But in the basic sense of it, you're just trying to make music, record it, have it go out there. I mean, so much of it is in the post. You want the microphones to capture the source sound. I mean, you're not going to capture something different than is actually there. So what's the job? The job of the microphone is to catch this sound. So how do you get the sound? All right, what mics do I got? What do they have? What do they do? Now where should I place them? But here's a real game changer. Other than the fact that I don't sound replace when I'm in control of my sound, I do not sound replace. But I enhance. You can enhance with elements without, like, in other words, I don't have the bottom snare going to tape, so to speak, because the kick drum goes into it too much. But I have the drum mic'd from the bottom being hit, so that as an effect, I can put it in and can EQ it accordingly. I can't EQ it the way it really sounds, the way I really want it to sound, because then the kick drum comes in, and then that microphone messes up the kick drum. Then you got to start dealing with gates or spot. Yeah. Oh, it's just one nightmare after the next. It's just like, in that case, that's what I do, depending on the application. Now, I use the bottom snare mic live for specific applications. And I don't just mean, I shouldn't use the word live, although, yeah, of course I do that like every live show, absolutely. But I use the one you're actually playing for recording, depending on the recording, depending on how tight does it have to be, or how much control do I need, how much high end do I have to put on that without destroying the kick drum and getting too much click on it, if that makes any sense. But
absolutely.
But then you got to aim it, you position it, you got to put it where you're going to put it, and everything affects everything else. I mean, you're not just going to sit there and put a fader up. This is not a drum machine here. You're not like putting up one drum. When you put a fader up, you are changing the sound of something across the room. You are changing the other thing. So they work together. So that's what I mean by, like, my enhancement. I don't sound replace. I will do the layering like that in that case, and nothing else in the kit. Kick drum and snare. That's it with the layer. So one thing that's important is this. When I was asked by Mike Ferris, when he was still artist guru at Pearl, mm-hmm. what I wanted for a drum set, there are two important things about this for our purposes today. The first thing is that he said I was about the only guy he ever heard of that said, no, I don't want that $21,000 drum set, for all these kick drums and tom-toms and snare drums and backup snare drum and tubes and hardware. Yeah, nah, I don't want that. I'm he's like, what? What do you mean you don't want the drums? I'm like, but I told him, and he can tell the story how it is. This was before I ordered the white kit that I have with the 4 kicks, before I started doing my my first full solo band that I did in the 2000s. Anyway, I didn't know what to get because they were Masterworks. And he's like, well, what do you want? I'm like, if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know what the wood does. That's what you do. So I could tell you what I want, and then you tell me how it's going to go. Except there was an issue with that. And I said, why don't you just wait a minute? I want to experience this. So I went out and I did drum clinics. And with the drum clinics at the time, I would play on the same drum kit for a week. A rep would have me. I would grace them with my presence for 5 days and drive them crazy. And then they would just run away then, right? You know the drill because you were one of the guys out with me.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know? And you spoiled me with all the pies. But anyway, you were a pie guy. Ryan, John's out of his mind for pies. Okay, so we changed our schedule to get pies. Okay, so funny. It was all funny and good and delicious. But so it's like, so I'm out and I'm pedaling the Pearl Vision Kit. I'm pedaling the Pearl Master Studio. I'm pedaling the Pearl Export. I'm pedaling the Pearl whatever it was, maple custom, this, the birch, the mahogany, whatever it was, many different kits. I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure out what these drums are all about really from my experience. I didn't figure anything out, and I don't know why, because the kit was different. It's like, well, just because it's a different drum set, right? So I guess this isn't uniform, but that was wrong. But I was just guessing. I'm like, well, why is the drum not sounding the same? Like, I don't get it. Is it the inconsistency? No, Pearl's the most consistent that there is.
Yeah.
They are Mr. Consistency. So it's not that. It's not the drum. Like, what the heck is it? Oh, the room, the this. Okay, well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. So he might call me the next year. What do you want for a kit? I don't want one. He's like, what? I'm like, well, first of all, I don't have any place to put it. I said, when I really need the drums, I'll ask you, as opposed to what I know you guys have experienced, which is, hi, what are you doing? Can I have this? Like every whatever, people want free stuff all the time, which is, I get it. In some cases, you got to have it. I'm not saying not to ask. I've called and asked. So I'm not being hypocritical in that way. It's what do you need it for? What do you need and what do you need it for?
Right.
What's the drill? Well, so-and-so got a new drum set, so I want one. Well, what? Excuse me, wait a minute. That's not a real reason. Like, come on. How come you gave him that special Zildjian leather jacket? I want one of those. How many times have you heard that one, John? How many times?
A lot.
A jacket. Give me a jacket. What? I'm not matter. Like, then the ego comes in, and now the whole artist rep thing it's all the wrong. That's wrong. I get it. It's whatever. But you guys
Brian knows. Yeah.
It's about relationships, but I didn't need it.
Yeah, I'm hanging up.
Yeah, and so yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. By the time it ends, hey Brian. So how about that? Yeah, it is what it is. Common sense. So he had asked me 3 times, and I said no. And he's like, all right, look at. Well, finally, I said yes. The reason I said yes is because after a few years of clinic touring, it hit me because I did something pretty common sense one day that I didn't have the common sense to do before. Getting all, into it and trying to find engineering reasons and this, that, the other thing. All I did was look down. I just looked down one day and went, you have to be kidding me. You have to be kidding me. What hit me all of a sudden was that the difference with a 4-ply maple sounding like the best thing I ever heard in my life, to the point that I didn't have a 4-ply maple. I wanted the 4-ply maple now. But then it didn't sound as good as the birch kit or even the Pearl Export in a different room. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
What? It's because every time any of the drum kits was over the top amazing, they were on a riser. They had air beneath it.
Aha.
And whenever I would go into this fancy studio, I'm like, these drums are like choked. I was like, my drums sound beautiful. What's wrong with this? It's because the drums were on a wooden floor, and the wooden floor was on top of concrete. There was no give. There was no ooze, know?
Yep.
It's like, so let me just tell you right now, that solo album, you said, holy crap, that drum kit over there what I did is I put a form of air under it. Like there wasn't enough room for me to put a full riser there. But what I did do is I got a layer of cork board, laid it down. I then got layers of gym mats, and I spent the extra money to get that with the double, so it was really soft and airy and it holds in air, and the other side was hard. I then put the plywood on top of that, and then put a specific rug on top of that. So you've got it's on wood, but it's not hard fully through and through. It's not going through to the floor of this place. The floor on this place is on concrete.
It's suspended. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why when I had this kit, if you look at the, I filmed like the Alien, which is a song that I co-composed, Dream Theater, and some of the stuff, when I was doing classes on that kit, it was on some rug, but that was on top of the floor. So now when I'm recording on this one, it's getting a sweeter sound. Like the floor tom legs are not going on concrete necessarily. They're going a couple of layers between me and the concrete. So that's what had me determine what the difference was in the shells. Once I got to understand it, then I knew, okay, I'm going to use the mahogany kit on less, because there's less here. I'm going to use the birch kit over there where there's more air and that thing is resonating differently, if that makes any sense. So the close mics didn't really matter all that much because they're close mics, but it does matter in that the drum resonates differently. It vibrates differently. The drums are slightly more choked on the concrete. I mean, why wouldn't they be? It's concrete with a piece of wood in between it.
Yeah.
So that's all. That's what I have to say, is that at the end of the day, the relationships matter. The gear that is requested, that is suggested, matters. The stuff that you're using matters. The result that you're trying to get matters. The control of the situation can change everything. It matters. And all of it is just like a giant equation. It's like a giant equation. It's not a complex thing when you see it like that, but the variables can be extremely complex. Extremely complex.
Yeah.
You might not know why one drum head's doing one thing and another one is not. You're like, well, it doesn't make any sense. But then the floor has to do with it. And then, I could just keep going and going.
Well, and we're the benefactors of you figuring out those equations, because we get to listen to how amazing your sound is that you spent so much time perfecting over years. And, that's a huge reason why I thought of you to come on here and talk about all that, because your sound has always inspired me and inspired so many people. And we wanted to dig in deeper to it. So we appreciate you.
I appreciate that you got what the sound was, because you've seen me up close. You hear me as I really play. That's the me that you know. And you hear me live when, depending on the venue, the drums sound unbelievable because, they're on air, but it depends how they're being mixed. If I'm mixed low, it's not going to be great.
Yeah.
If I'm muffled, it's going to be muffled. And so what I do want to say about what my sound is that, yes, it's been years, but it hasn't been years of people knowing what it even is, except people like you guys or people that have actually seen the other side of it or been in the studio with me or at a venue, and they happen to be in a spot where they're getting the actual power that I'm playing with, and the nuances and the vibe and the swing and the groove and all of that stuff. They're not getting the stuff, that's necessarily different than that. It's processed more. But so my sound is just coming to be now. Now, I mean, this is finally my actual sound is coming out. It is largely there on my solo album. When I say largely, is that there is a percentage of the studio Jimmy T putting his 2 cents in for the job at hand that I asked him to do, that he did it the most unbelievable job at. And that is slightly different than if I'm doing a playthrough or it's like a class or the drums are by themselves. They're different different results, but it's largely me. What you're hearing out of this and that audio clip is 100% all me. The Untethered Angel video playthrough that I did is purely me, purely on that kit. There's not even any removal of leakage. It's just open, So that's kind of what you
That's
get.
fantastic.
I'll put a link to that, Mike, in the show notes too. When we put this up,
Johnny,
I'll put a link to that.
Yeah. Is there any questions? Any more questions come in that we can quickly address?
Yeah, let's see. There's one last couple of more that came through. Here's one that I'll throw by Mike, and I think we know the answer to this. Al Strange asked, "What album that Mike's played on does Mike think best captures his sound?" And I'm gonna guess your solo record.
That's it. That's
Invisible.
the only one.
Yeah,
that's one of those. It's not the only one. It's one of them.
Yeah.
Let's see, Mull Muzzler 2 that I did with James has a lot of the more plain kind of that's the sound in the room. Although there was some a couple of issues recording, so that one's not perfect, but it's you just hear a lot more of me than if it was like sound replaced and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, Extreme Waiting for the Punchline.
Yes. Yeah. Great sound on that.
But it wasn't the drums were Nuno's. They were Nuno's drums. They weren't even my brand, my anything.
Right.
But it was still me. It was still me on the drums playing. And those were produced from the perspective, like Nuno was in charge of it, but Nuno plays the drums. They were his drums.
Mm-hmm.
Like he knew those from the drum stool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
I've seen him play. Yeah. He's a badass drummer. Yeah.
So then he knew. So I was on that drum set, and it's still me playing. It still has my thing to it. So, but it's still through his filter, but it didn't fully, like, it didn't change my essence.
Mm-hmm.
But my solo album is really the one that is going to get, like, okay, I get it. And but people have to put headphones on. They got to hear the drums with the headphones. You're not just use those AirPod things. I mean, please. Or and now that Bluetooth, that doesn't even work as good as a wired one anyway. I don't think.
Right.
I don't think. I don't know. I mean, it's whatever. I would say get a set of or is it Shure headphones?
Yes. And I'll just while you show those headphones, I'll remind everybody the record Mike is talking about is Invisible Signs, Mike's solo record, and I will put a link. I'll put all this information in the show notes when I put this up officially on YouTube. But this has been great, guys. Thank you so much for doing this today. I think there's so much information I think you guys have provided for everybody. It's going to probably take folks a few minutes to digest it all. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny.
You're welcome. I really, I have this thing set. I wish I could like play it and put the, hold on a minute. Where's the voice? Yeah, the input for the voice mic, even though it was muted, the input went goosh and redlined, and I heard click, click. Again,
that was a nice little treat for the end of the show for people to hear.
I mean, how did the kit translate without this thing messing anything up?
Yeah, it only cut in a couple of spots where we lost it, but otherwise it sounded great.
It's the nature of the
Yeah.
beast here. It's the nature of
Yeah.
the beast. You know, and my album, the actual tracks, when you buy it, which I wouldn't mind happening rather than Spotify. Spotify doesn't sound as good. It just doesn't. It's not the
Yeah.
same. And the thing about, you know, buying it is obviously people have to be paid for it, which is why you charge money for something, but you're getting a much better listen out of it.
Well said. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. All right, gentlemen. I thank you both so much for being here today. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. And
Thank you, Mike.
please give a
Thank
big
you,
hand to
Johnny.
Mike Mangini, legendary Grammy Award winning drummer Mike Mangini. I still love saying that. That's my buddy, won a Grammy. Come on. And also, of course, Ryan Smith from Shure Microphones, my main man. All right. Thank you, guys. Hang with me for 1 second, if you would, while I end the stream, and we'll say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again real soon. Appreciate it. Please subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. All right. Well, that's my show. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, all podcasts are available on all the podcast platforms. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And a reminder that Live from My Drum Room t-shirts are available for $25 in the contiguous U.S., and I'm going to give you the Venmo information so that you can purchase one. And I want to take a moment and thank everyone who's bought one already. A reminder that 100% of the proceeds go toward a scholarship at the Percussive Arts Society, PAS, and you're supporting a great cause when you buy one of these shirts. So the Venmo information, if you're listening and not watching this on YouTube, it's at John-DChristopher-2. You can also email me at livefrommydrumroom@gmail.com with any questions. All right, so thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Remember, no drummers are harmed on any show. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. I'll see you again real soon.